something greater than this personal sense of myself that has to this point availed nothing. A yielding to, if you were a Taoist, you would say a yielding to Tao, or if a yielding to God, or if you were fundamentalist, perhaps you'd say I'm yielding to the blood of Jesus, or something like that. Or it might be you're giving up to Nellie D. Grabenbaker. But in any event, all those, by whatever discipline they've traveled, in speaking of the event and what appeared to induce it, inevitably speak of a giving up. And a giving up of a personal sense of selfhood, and a yielding, and giving it up not in despair to nothing, but giving and yielding in despair to an ineffable something. All right, now, what next in this scenario we're talking about? Whenever this yielding happens, always comes a grand sense of relief. You can read countless accounts of this relief as it's spoken of. It seems as though guilt has been lifted. It's as though darkness has been taken off, as though scales had fallen from the eyes. And whatever the discipline of the world, whatever the discipline one is following, if it is organized and has an institutional something behind it, inevitably they take credit for this grand sense of relief that follows the giving up. Well, it seems to me that, and this of course fortifies and strengthens their basis for being in a tangible world of organizations, and they take credit for this grand sense of relief that everyone feels. And of course, there, unfortunately, it works like this too in the scenario that we call the human experience. The disciple, feeling this sense of relief, inevitably, he or she knows that the relief is honest, that there really has been a lessening of a sense of guilt, a lessening of a sense of person or ego. And what does this do? It strengthens that one's belief in the power and the importance of the discipline or pathway he or she is walking. Well, let's talk about this feeling of relief that comes about for just a moment. We've all felt it. It's the same for all mankind. It is as physical as anything can be physical. What is physical but the means by which spiritual is made plain, and the two are one? But in any event, it is this physical feeling of relief that comes from giving up and letting go has been spoken of by countless people, again, from whatever path they came from, and usually in the same terms. It's as though something warm had been poured over him. And it drains the tensions away. It washes the guilts away. There's a physical feeling that's actually like water pouring from the fingers and toes. Now, Christianity calls this experience, which incidentally is very natural and very normal for everyone. It is not so often recognized for what it is, but when it is recognized for what it is, that experience has been called the Holy Baptism by Christianity. It's been called other things in the other disciplines. But it's always the same experience. Now, we've all experienced this sense of baptism every time we've given up and let God take charge of our affair. I don't mean given up to do nothing. I mean give up to allow God to be in charge of our affairs, and then do, under those circumstances, what that relief, that grand sense of relief allows us to see, to do, all right, that are available immediately to come as wings on the feet for all of us, are the same. Any scholar can see that they are the same by way of any discipline. Now, there is a final one that's supposed to be the grandest of them all, a sense of peace and all rightness that is accompanied with almost a disorienting light, but a feeling of timeless singleness, a feeling of oneness of everything, and always with this feeling, a knowledge that peace and all rightness are the genuine and honest fact of being. The Eastern disciplines make no bone about the last one here. This one, the last one I've mentioned, as being the most significant. It speaks of the rest of them as being somewhat lower in degree. The last one is the most significant because it allows and demands, actually, a total yielding of the yielder. It calls for the demise of the one who surrenders. It ends the one walking along the pathway. There's not even a consciousness any longer of a person or a human that is struggling to climb his way up to try to get to God's belt or something. And it is highly venerated, this last experience, because it leaves a timeless sense of consciousness only on the scene. For myself, these experiences come as one experience. It seems always that there has been no interval of time between them. I don't know how else to say it, except that from one experience to the next, there is an absolute certainty that all of the human falderall in between was as though it were light slowed down or entrapped light, in which nothing really mattered. What does matter is the light-to-light experience, between which, as if it could really be interrupted, but between which all of the aging processes, all of the time processes and so forth are understood to be nothing. I might point out that the obverse of this is true. If it can seem humanly that we have a human experience that we call good, most certainly there is a delineating experience within humanhood to make that plain. And humanly, we might call it a bad experience. I went from one bad experience to another bad experience, and it seemed that the same was true, that there had been no intervening time in between. I remember the Korean War, and 10 years earlier there had been World War II. I was in combat in both of those experiences, when after 10 years I found myself back in combat, leading troops up and down hills and doing all of the things that soldiers called on to do in combat. It seemed to me as though there had been no intervening time at all. And yet that intervening time included marriage and 2 sons and a home and an experience as a civilian and in the business world. So the obverse is true too, but the peak-to-peak experience that all of the disciplines are aiming for, the experience of peace, the peace that is beyond understanding, is the same no matter what discipline one follows. It is spoken of in the same terms, whether written by an Indian, a Jew, Christian, or a heathen, whatever a heathen is. And I'm sure the birds singing are singing of the same experience. And I know that when the wind blows, the trees tell of that experience. Okay? So much for that. The experience is induced by a frustrating letting go, or a giving up. And to whom? To God. A giving up what? A giving up of one's personal sense of self. And inevitably it is accompanied by a grand sense of relief of I am not guilty of all the sins of commission or omission. Lo and behold, everything is all right.